good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I so do appreciate you being here. I know you have options. I'm glad you choose this show. This is the show where we sink our claws into the truth, and we've got a few headlines for you this morning. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. Busy comment section already. Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, my Rumble friends. Appreciate you being here. Now, let's just dive right in, shall we? This Defund-the-Police senator, he kind of gets this reality check after a staffer of his, this is an Oak Brook office, the staffer was robbed at Knifepoint. So we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show, probably about the 7 o'clock hour. Now, first up, I do want to talk about PBS. So this is kind of like clickbait for me. I'll explain. I fell for the clickbait. PBS, they're claiming now that military officers are lawyering up. They are lawyering up over Trump's orders here. Okay, and I want to tell you what's really happening because the media, they're launching this narrative that what Trump is doing is illegal and that the military officers are concerned about executing unlawful orders, and they're lawyering up because of that, and they're worried that they're going to be held liable. So we're going to talk about it, and then I do want to talk about SNAP today because Secretary Rollins, she's looking at even bigger cuts, but with the cuts that passed in the big beautiful bill, Donald Trump signed the continuing resolution, keeps the government funded until January. With the changes in the big beautiful bill, there is about approximately 3 million people who are going to be trimmed off of the SNAP rolls. So if they're looking to make bigger cuts, that's huge. I'll be talking about this Democrat congressman. This is my favorite story of the day. So you guys definitely don't want to miss this. He is a congressman and he got caught viewing lewd photos. Viewing is sort of an understatement. Let's just say gawking at these lewd photos on a flight, and people took pictures of him looking at these lewd photos. Not pornography, but pretty dang close. If I had my view on it is, hey, it's pretty dang close to pornography, but there's moral decay in Congress. This is just another example of it. But the guy goes and does a 13-minute interview with somebody, and he blames Elon Musk for him looking at these lewd photos and getting caught looking at these lewd photos. So we're going to get to that story. That's my favorite story of the day, so you won't want to miss it. All right. I hate PBS, and I don't think you hate PBS enough. I don't think you hate NPR enough. I used to work for NPR, former NPR intern. You don't hate them enough. They definitely shouldn't be taking taxpayer dollars. Thank you, President Donald Trump. They no longer take taxpayer dollars. Now, President Donald Trump, there's a lot going on. He hasn't had a great week. This whole fighting with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'll get to that maybe tomorrow. I just want to talk about the narco terrorists and some of these operations because PBS is trying to spin this as an illegal operation, and it's just not. Okay, so Trump's war on these narco terrorists, there is sort of a pressure campaign against the Venezuelan autocrat Nicolas Maduro. Okay, and there is a pressure campaign against Venezuela autocrat Nicolas Maduro, and he is unpopular in a lot of quarters, okay, in a lot of places other than our American media. You would think that sooner rather than later, a resourceful person in this industry, in this profession that is supposed to be about researching, finding out the truth, you would think that they'd get around to asking why there's so much support for Nicolas Maduro and drug cartels and Chinese influence dictators among our foreign policy elites. And I'm not holding my breath. I would like journalists to actually perform an act of journalism and, search for the truth and ask why people really like Nicolas Maduro. There is this Donald Trump is anti-Nicolas Maduro, okay? But there's like this campaign or this narrative that, hey, Nicolas Maduro is actually not doing anything illegal, or that these boats allegedly, nobody can prove that there's narcotics on them. And the American media is not doing their job. In fact, they're shilling for Chinese-influenced dictators and the foreign policy elites who support those Chinese-influenced dictators and the drug cartels. And that brings me to today's story. So this is going to get a little complicated this morning because I'm going to be talking a lot about the military operation. Okay, so the U.S. Southern Command, what they did is they've carried out a lot of strikes, but this was their 21st strike, and this strike was linked to drug boats, and they've been doing strikes really since September 1st. This whole operation has been going on since September 1st, where they strike down boats, drug trafficking boats linked to drug trafficking. Now, this is where it gets interesting. He took it a step further, President Donald Trump, in this operation. So during a press conference, President Donald Trump, he had to dispel rumors that he was dead again. People keep trying to say that, oh, President Donald Trump died. No, he's not. He's alive. So he had to dispel those rumors during the press conference, which I thought was really funny. I'll get to that here in just a second. But he also used the occasion to announce that the U.S. military had destroyed a drug-running boat from Venezuela in the Caribbean. Okay, so, but it goes a step further because people actually died in this latest strike. So, and by people, I mean the drug runner. So no loss there. When you leave the room, he announced in the press conference, quote, "You'll see that we just, over the last few minutes, literally shot a boat, a drug-carrying boat." So he says this in the press conference. So this is the first instance, seemingly, I mean, who knows? I'm not in these rooms, but it looks like this might have been the first instance where the U.S. military used deadly force against drug runners on these boats. They've used warnings. They've used disabling shots before. They've been fired in the past. Like I said, this operation has been pretty lengthy. I mean, it started in September 1st. So this action takes place, and it takes place amidst what I would call a conflict. It is barely restrained conflict between Venezuela and the United States. President Donald Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1789. Okay, so he invoked that act, and he used that act to designate Venezuelan members of the Venezuelan-based transnational gang TDA. This is Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is how you say it. It's a terrorist organization. So he used that act, and he has labeled them, designated them as enemy aliens, and he said, hey, we have to expedite their expulsion from our country. We have to expedite their deportations. So here's what the executive order did. President Donald Trump signed. He invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 in response to national security threats posed by the Venezuelan designated foreign terrorist group TDA. The order cites TDA's clandestine crimes in the U.S. They're spying on the U.S. Okay, Chinese based. Okay, let's not forget here, Venezuela, Chinese influenced, Nicolas Maduro, Chinese influenced. Okay, and they're spying on the United States. And yeah, he said, okay, we're designating you as a foreign terrorist organization, and your clandestine crimes, including, they're spying, but they're also trafficking drugs in, weapons, murdering people, kidnapping people, sex trafficking, extortion, you name it, they're doing it. Okay, TDA. So in response to all of that, here's what the order says. All Venezuelan citizens who are 14 years or older identified as TDA members are not, and they're not naturalized, and they're not permanent residents here in the United States, will be liable to immediate apprehension, restraint, securement, and removal as alien enemies per the invoked act. The Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security will be tasked with implementing this executive order consistent with applicable law. Okay, so that's the executive order. None of this is really new. I'm kind of providing you background. Fast forward to today, this is kind of new. So Trump has placed a whopping $50 million bounty. Now, for context, Osama bin Laden only warranted $25 million bounty. Nicolas Maduro, he's got $50 million bounty. Okay, and that is what Trump has placed on him. Now, on top of placing that whopping bounty, you've got ships. You've got one of the ships being the amphibious assault ship. This is pretty cool. It's land and water ship. It's called the USS Iwo Jima. And then you've got the Marine Expeditionary Unit, the 22nd Expeditionary Unit launched to Venezuelan Caribbean coast. Okay, so there is a naval task force on other ships, and they're sending them out over there to Venezuela's Caribbean coast. Okay, now it's almost certain that this task force on one of these ships carried out this operation where people died. Okay, like I said, this was the first time, seemingly, where they used deadly force, and that was announced by President Donald Trump. And most certainly, the ship that they, attacked was TDA. Okay, so the operation sort of demonstrates here back in August, September. So before the actual operation launched back in August, he had authorized military action against drug cartels. And there were, reports early on that he was going to do this. And yes, this has happened where he's authorized the military to take action against the drug cartels, which is huge. President Donald Trump, I guess, secretly signed a directive to the Pentagon to begin using military force against certain Latin America drug cartels. And his administration has deemed terrorist organizations, according to people familiar with the matter. The decision to bring the American military into the fight is very aggressive. It is the most aggressive step so far the administration has really taken in this campaign against drug cartels. Okay, this is very aggressive. This is the most aggressive step at deadly force. Up to this point, I think that it's been a lot of warning shots, disabling shots with these drug-carrying boats. It signals that Mr. Trump's continued willingness to use military force to carry out what he primarily has considered what has been primarily considered in the past a law enforcement responsibility. So in the past, it's not been a military thing. But Mr. Trump here, he wants to take it a step further, and he wants to really curb the flow of fentanyl and other illegal drugs. Yes, our fight necessarily isn't with man. It is with man because they're bringing the drugs in here. But what's killing our people the most is fentanyl, the illegal drugs pouring over the border. And he wants to put a stop to it. So he goes a step further. It's no longer a law enforcement responsibility. This is a military operation. Okay. So the order provides an official basis for the possibility of direct military operations. at sea and on foreign soil against cartels. So pretty much he's said, military, I want you to get this done. Okay, that's what this order, this operation that started in September is really all about. Shutting down the military, or shutting down the cartels via the military. U.S. military officials have started drawing up options for how military could go after these groups. Okay, so people familiar with the conversation said, speaking on the condition of being anonymous, to discuss sensitive internal deliberations. So they're internally deliberating right now on how they are going to go about, either on foreign soil or at sea, taking down these drug cartels. Now, coincidentally, the attack on what seems to be a Venezuelan-based drug boat comes as Maduro, Nicolas Maduro, Chinese-influenced dictator, he was begging Donald Trump to back off. Okay, this has been going on for a while. He's begging Donald Trump to back off. President Nicolas Maduro has warned that he will respond to any U.S. military action with an armed fight, and claimed that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is trying to draw President Donald Trump into war in the Caribbean, and that would hurt his reputation. Okay, this is what Nicolas Maduro say. He says, Mr. President Donald Trump, he said, watch out because Mr. Rubio wants to stain your hands with blood. So he, in the press conference, Maduro called the Venezuelan people warriors who would respond to any like act of war or any kind of like fighting with maximum rebellion. And he projected, force, although he's calling for peace. Okay. You see what he does here? He says, yeah, well, we're going to meet it with maximum rebellion. But at the same time, he's attempting to call for peace. And he actually tried to appeal to Mr. President Donald Trump's campaign promise where he was going to end all wars, okay, and not start them. So in this press conference that Maduro had, he was like trying to appeal to President Donald Trump, his campaign promise of ending wars and not starting them. He went as far as to mention the Nobel Peace Prize, which apparently, Trump has stated, which he hasn't really an interest in receiving it. This is an illusion. He's alluding that President Donald Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. Maduro, and he kind of invokes that, and he said that Rubio is getting President Donald Trump to a point where he can't receive that, and a point where he's going to enter into wars, okay, in the Caribbean. And he said that Rubio is a longtime proponent of changing government in Venezuela, which I don't think is completely wrong. I think that Marco Rubio is a bit of a war hawk and is a bit of this, part of the republic. But we have to get the fentanyl under control. I know too many people who've overdosed on fentanyl. President Donald Trump said, along with his campaign promise of not starting wars, he said that he was going to crack down on the drug trafficking, okay, because it's killing our people. And Maduro here, he says he wants Trump's name to be stained. Marco Rubio wants Trump's name to be stained with blood for centuries. Look, in my view, the 600,000 plus Venezuelans who are currently enjoying temporary protected status, because that's an estimate, and they're all in Chicago. A lot of them are in Chicago. 600,000 Venezuelans are here under a temporary protected status because Joe Biden, thanks. I think that the move to deport them is destabilizing Maduro's regime. And I don't think that we need to do a Marco Rubio thing where we go in and we change government in Venezuela. It never really works out. I think that the best way to destabilize Maduro's regime is to send all these TDA members, these Venezuelans, back to his country to enforce immigration law here in our land. That should be viewed as one component of this effort to force. We don't want Maduro in office. He's a Chinese influence dictator. He's not good for America. They're trafficking drugs over here. Okay, we don't want him in office, but I don't think we should go in and actually unseat him. There's a way to do it. One part of it would be to deport these 600,000 Venezuelans that are currently here and were given temporary status. Another way would be to attack these ships once they, are out in the sea and they're coming to America, and you have intelligence that they are coming to America and that they do, in fact, have narcotics on them. Shut them down, blow them up, right? We want to force Maduro out of office and return Venezuela to a working nation, not controlled by a Chinese influence dictator. That should be our goal as America, because that's what's best for America. Okay, we want America first, America only. Okay, but the only way we're going to have America first, America only is if our people stop dying from the drug trafficking and the drugs coming into the country. So President Donald Trump made an announcement on Truth Social. He said, "On my orders, U.S. military forces conducted a kinetic strike against positively identified Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists in the Southcom area of responsibility. TDA is a designated foreign terrorist organization operating under the control of Nicolas Maduro, responsible for mass murder, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, acts of violence, and terror across the United States and Western Hemisphere. The strike occurred while the terrorists were at sea in international waters transporting illegal narcotics heading to the United States." Okay, so he says that definitively. So the media is going to try to spin this like they don't know if it was transporting drugs, this boat, and they don't know if it was headed to the United States. The strike resulted in 11 terrorists killed. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. Please let this serve as a notice to anybody thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Here's the Truth Social. I'll throw it up there. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. So, at the direction of the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, I'm giving you guys some background before I get into the stupid PBS article that I clicked on. At the direction of Pete Hegseth, there was this lethal kinetic strike. Okay, and it was a strike on a vessel operated by a designated terrorist organization, TDA. Intelligence confirmed that the vessel did have illicit narcotics on it. They were smuggling them into America, and they were carrying narcotics. Okay, so this is a known narco trafficking route that they were on. So I'm going to share with you the footage of the actual strike. Here we go. Let's take a look. Whoo! It's just on fire. Okay, so we blew it up. And then it stays on fire for a good bit. Okay, so as an aside, and this is just my view, maybe they weren't just smuggling drugs. Maybe there was gasoline on the boat as well, because I don't know about you, I don't think that coke and fentanyl burn like that, which maybe implies that they're not just engaged in drug running. Maybe they've got the gasoline. I don't know if this was for the boat, fuel for the boat. Maybe they were conducting other trafficking operations, sex trafficking operations. I'm sure they're involved. These cartels are involved in more than just drug running. Okay. But I looked at this and I thought to myself, Is there more than just coke and fentanyl on that boat? So now this brings me to the news that I really want to talk about this morning, the narrative, the media narrative about all of this. You get this drumbeat from the press that these are illegal strikes. They are saying that these are illegal strikes. For instance, here's the headline from Politico. Former GOP officials fear U.S. strikes on alleged drug smugglers aren't legal. Those former GOP officials, what do they not know? It seems like Politico goes and gets their take on pretty much everything. Former GOP officials, i.e. Trump, never Trumpers. Okay. So your Adam Kinzinger types. Okay. And then there's another article here that has like kind of Nazi connotations to it. Because of course it does, because Donald Trump, Nazi. Here's the headline from The Independent. Just following orders, experts doubt legal memo shields troops from prosecution over Trump boat strikes. Wow. Okay. And in this one, this is the PBS one. There is a guy, in the Independent one, and then I'm going to get to the PBS one here in just a second. But we've established at this point, I think, throw it in the comment section if you agree, we've established that there is a narrative being pushed by the American media that Donald Trump is a Nazi and that he's conducting illegal operations, yada, yada, yada. Okay. In the Independent article, I clicked on that one. The guy, he was part of a DC think tank. And he thinks that Trump hasn't established that these strikes are lawful. Okay. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that Donald Trump has to go to some sort of lawful killing judge and to get permission to use the military in the interest of national security. I don't think that that's part of the president's part of the president's job description, okay, that he's got to go to a judge and get permission to use the military. He's the commander in chief. So another guy says that future administrations might decide to prosecute everybody involved, not just President Donald Trump, but the people who carried out these attacks, carried out these orders to conduct these strikes, okay? Which is a pile of horse crap, okay? Because that would mean there is no law, like no one would ever do a lawful order again, and you'd pretty much make it to where the president can't use the military, because if somebody in the future doesn't like a policy, okay, they can just prosecute you, okay? So that means no one ever gets a lawful order ever again in the future, because future administration, if they don't like the policy, they can just prosecute their predecessors. Silly. Okay. Now, this is where we get to the PBS article, because I thought this was fascinating. There was a no-notice resignation by a commander admiral Alvin Hosley. So he gave a no-notice resignation. Now, it's been widely rumored at this point that he gave a no-notice resignation because he doesn't agree with the whacking of narcotic smugglers, okay? Narcotic smugglers, which, why would you not agree with that policy? Everybody knows somebody that's overdosed on fentanyl. Why would you not agree with the whacking of these terrible terrorists, okay? People who have been designated as foreign terrorists. So I was intrigued by the PBS article, and to my detriment, I clicked on it. Okay. Here is what the article is headlined. Military personnel seek legal advice on whether Trump-ordered missions are lawful. Now, this Alvin guy, he might be the first of many here to be jumping ship. No pun intended, but pun intended. Okay, we're talking about chips. He might be like the first of many. many military personnel might be seeking legal advice, and morale might be hitting rock bottom, and the wheels might be about ready to come off this operation. And I was kind of worried. I was like, okay, this Venezuela cartel operation, they started in September. Are they going to have military personnel jumping ship because this is so unlawful? And, is this going to kind of spark a mass resignation of people that can't be ignored, and they won't be able to conduct the operation if people are resigning en masse. So the subject of the interview here in the PBS article, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because PBS, but they weren't funded by your tax dollars, thanks to President Donald Trump, not as much. But in the interview, there was this guy. His name is Frank Rosenblatt, and he is the president of National Institute of Military Justice, and he runs a nonprofit organization because, of course, he does. The nonprofit is the Orders Project, the Orders Project. So this is a group, a nonprofit of professionals experienced in military justice who are committed to connecting service members with experienced legal counsel to make informed decisions about their duties under the law as it relates to orders. Okay, so they provide legal assistance, much like the Immigration Project provides legal assistance for illegal immigrants to evade deportation. This project provides, really, I'm just going to say it, legal counsel for people who are derelict in duty or military personnel who are jumping ship or not loyal there. That's what I said. And I'll get to why I say that here in just a second. So the interview starts this way in PBS. Military service personnel have been seeking outside legal counsel and advice about some of the missions that President Donald Trump and his administration has assigned to them. The U.S. strikes against alleged drug trafficking boats and deployments to American cities have sparked a firestorm of debate over their legality, and some service members are turning to nonprofit organizations for help. So Rosenblatt, this Frank guy, Rosenblatt, he says, we're primarily getting calls, from a lot of people who are not directly involved, okay, in these operations. Okay, so these aren't the people who are actually conducting the operations. They're not the ones who are approving them. They're getting calls from people who are indirectly involved in these operations at this point. He goes on to say that these people are giving advice and opinions against the operation, are feeling an informal pressure to get on board. So they've been given advice and opinions that are against the operation, but yet these indirect military personnel feel pressure to get on board with this operation, despite the advice, despite the opinions of others that these operations are illegal. Not illegal, okay? They are a foreign terrorist organization designated by the Aliens of Enemies Act 1798. Not illegal, okay? Via executive order, like the president has to have a command over the U.S. military, bottom line. So the way I kind of read this PBS article, he says, we're getting a lot of calls from people who are indirectly involved. The way I read this is, okay, the military lawyers who ruled the roost in Iraq, Afghanistan, creating a maze of legal hoops for commanders to jump through. They had all kinds of hoops back in Iraq and Afghanistan. These probably are the same military lawyers back then. From back then, they had to jump through all kinds of hoops in order to engage the enemy. Okay. These lawyers are finding themselves sidelined, I think, because a lot of these military personnel, they're kind of ignoring the advice and the opinions of these legal counsel And they kind of feel this pressure to get on board with the operation, this informal pressure to get on board with the operation. So the way I see this is that, these lawyers are being sidelined. Screw you, lawyers. You don't know what you're talking about. We're going to get on board anyway with the operation. That's the way I kind of read this. Okay. If the operators aren't concerned, the actual people who are directly involved in the operation, the Venezuela cartel operations, the people who are approving these operations, if these people don't have concerns, it really doesn't matter. Okay. No one should be questioning these orders at that point. Like, you have people who are indirectly involved and they're semi-questioning, but they're still not like abandoning the operation. They're still feeling this informal pressure to get on board with the operation. Yeah, it's a bunch of horse dung. Okay, this PBS article, it's literally clickbait. Because there's no the resignation is fascinating by the Admirable Alvin. That's fascinating, and that's why I clicked on it, and I knew that, and I was like, oh, is there going to be some sort of mass resignation? No, not at all. So they have this source book, and I want to talk about this. Stepping back, a lawyer giving you advice on carrying out an order isn't all that useful. Okay, I want to look at their very own source book. The Orders Project, like I said, this is a nonprofit organization, and their whole goal is to kind of get the disloyal people in the military to question their orders. Okay, to put it bluntly. So the Orders Project, they actually have a downloadable source book. It's called, quote, a source book for advising military personnel. It's a publication. You can download it and read it. And I'm going to use their own publication, their own source book, as to explain why relying on legal advice to disobey an order is a high risk, low payoff proposition, and really a lawyer giving you any kind of advice about carrying out an order isn't useful and is actually very high risk and a low payoff proposition. Okay. So the premise of the organization itself, the nonprofit organization itself, is gay. So first and foremost, any order you receive from a superior officer, so long as it's military related, is presumed to be lawful. You don't get to demand to see the legal opinion. You really don't even get to do the whole theatrical thing. Well, give me the order in writing. Okay, give it to me in writing. That's not how the military works. And in their very own source book, the Orders Project, this is the nonprofit organization. This is taken directly from Article 90 of the Uniform Code of the Military Justice, just in case you guys wanted to go download it and go find it yourself. Willfully disobeying a superior commissioned officer. This is the section, Article 90 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I'm just going to read it to you because I pulled some of it this morning. Take a listen. So the lawfulness of an order. It goes into Article 90, goes into this. It says interference of lawfulness. An order requiring the performance of a military duty or act may be inferred to be lawful, and it is disobeyed at the subordinate's peril. This interference does not apply to a patently illegal order, such as one that directs a commission of a crime. So patently being very distinctly illegal and known to be legal, clearly without a doubt illegal. Okay, and it might order you to commit a crime. Okay. So look, if you guess wrong, say you're in the military and you're a military guy and you disobey orders and you do it because, oh, I think the order is unlawful. If you guess wrong, that is going to be very painful for you, because the best you could be looking at is like life in prison. Okay. Life in prison, worst case scenario, death. Okay. And I'm going to talk about that here. So listen to this. If the offense is committed, so if you disobey orders, and this is your punishment if you disobey orders, quote, from the very own source book that this nonprofit organization provides, if the offense is committed during a time of war, by death or such other punishment as court-martialed may direct. So, yeah, punishable by death. So if we're in a time of war and you disobey orders because you think that they're unlawful and they're not clearly or patently illegal, clearly, without a doubt, illegal, you if disobey them and you guess wrong, it's so painful for you if we're in a time of war that you will die. It is punishable by death. Now, if the offense is committed outside of a time of war, by such punishment other than death, so you can't, if it were outside of wartime, you spend possibly life in prison. So there's a punishment other than death as a court-martial may direct. Okay, so wow. The fact that this nonprofit organization even exists is fascinating to me, because there is a very high risk, low payoff proposition here if you disobey orders and question the legality of orders. Why would you want to, being a member of the military? Okay, now here's the standard you're up against. So the question of legality. Okay. And this is cited in the source book as well. Fascinating stuff here. Very important that you know this, because the media is going to be out there spinning this narrative, spinning this lie that what Trump is doing is illegal, and that the military members, the poor military members, are carrying out illegal acts and they could be prosecuted by the future administration. Total nonsense. But this is Rule 916 in the source book. Okay. And it talks about obedience to orders and your defenses that you can have. Okay. So it is a defense to any offense that the accused was acting pursuant to orders unless the accused knew the orders to be unlawful, or a person of ordinary sense and understanding would have known the orders to be unlawful. Okay, so ordinarily, the lawfulness of an order is decided by a military judge. An exception might exist when the sole issue is whether the person who gave the order, in fact, occupied a certain position at the time. An act performed pursuant to a lawful order is justified. So, an act performed pursuant to an unlawful order is excused unless the accused knew it to be unlawful, or a person of ordinary sense and understanding would have known it to be unlawful. Okay, so that part's important. An act performed pursuant to an unlawful order is excused. Okay, so even if Donald Trump, and it's not, because we just went through the 1798 Act, the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798. He's invoked that and deemed TDA as a foreign terrorist organization. There was intelligence that there was narcotics aboard the ship and that they were set to go to the United States. He was acting, lawfully there, President Donald Trump. But even if he wasn't, these military personnel, they're going to be covered, okay? Because a person of ordinary sense and understanding is a high bar to clear. If the president or the Secretary of War, in this case Pete Hegseth, had directed an operation, a person of ordinary sense and understanding would probably think that order to whack drug smugglers was legal, okay? So the military personnel, even if that act is unlawful, the order is unlawful as directed by Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump, military personnel would have a clear defense, okay, because they'd be acting as a person of ordinary sense and understanding. Hey, the president, the secretary of war, they issued the order. It's not, they're asking us to whack illegal smugglers who are carrying illegal narcotics. Like, I would think that this would be a lawful order, and even if the big guy is wrong, Donald Trump is wrong, the order is colorably legal. Okay. You don't have to worry about somebody hunting you down in the future because you carried out these orders. Okay. Plausibly valid. Okay. If it looks like a duck quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay. If it looks legal, it's legal. Okay. So that's pretty much what the rules are there. So right now, it doesn't even seem like that many military personnel, at least the people who are directly involved in these operations, are really raising a fuss or seeking legal advice or resigning. Like, it doesn't even look like that at this point. PBS, they just wanted you to click on this, and it's totally fake and gay. But I'm just explaining that military personnel will not be prosecuted, even if this law or this order directed by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth or President Donald Trump is later to be found out unlawful. Military personnel are going to be have a clear defense in this because it was colorably legal. So they don't have to worry about being hunted down in the future. This, by the way, is actually what they call the Calley defense. Okay, so Lieutenant William Calley, this is a little bit of history for you. Come on in, listen to the history lesson. He was court-martialed for the My Lai massacre. Okay. In his defense, that was that when he was allegedly told by his superior to kill the villagers, that his intelligence was so below ordinary that he couldn't be held responsible for thinking that the order was legal. Okay, it didn't work. He said that he was told by his superiors to kill these villagers, and that he couldn't be held responsible for thinking that the order was legal. Okay, and it didn't work because, but this is the defense. The bottom line here is that consulting a lawyer is not, in the case of either blowing up a drug cartel boat or invading Venezuela, is not going to give you an out. Okay. Consulting a lawyer, that they think that because they're the Orders Project, military personnel consulting lawyers gives them an out from future prosecution if they were carrying out an unlawful order. That's very different. Going after drug cartels, by the way, Calley, this instance with Lieutenant Calley, it's very different because they are quite literally blowing up drug cartel boats. Okay. And if you object to these operations, this is what I would say to military personnel. If you object to these operations, you got to have the cojones, go to your boss, throw your rank on his desk and tell him you're out. Okay. That's where I'm at with all of this. Like, if you don't like the operation, stop going to your little lawyers with your nonprofit organization, consulting your lawyers, and you think that consulting a lawyer and getting legal advice is going to, exempt you from any kind of prosecution in the future. If you believe that this law is unlawful or this order is unlawful, like, it's not going to exempt you from having to answer for that. You won't have to answer for it and even if you do, you have a very clear defense that this was a colorably legal order, okay, given by the president and the Secretary of War, and that you're blowing up smugglers, okay? This is a person of ordinary sense and understanding would see this as a lawful and think that this is a lawful order. So you would have a clear defense there. But I think that it's kind of cojones-less, stupid of these military personnel to go consult these stupid little lawyers and think that that's going to give them some sort of out if this were to be deemed unlawful disorder. It just goes to show you that this PBS story is not really anything more than clickbait. Okay. And it worked. I clicked on it. And I was enraged enough to talk about it this morning. But really what this is an information operation by our media. Okay. At PBS, we saw the Independent Politico. They're all jumping onto this narrative that our military officers don't like President Donald Trump. And the military officers working in the U.S. Southcom area of operations are lawyering up because they believe that the operation is illegal. And that is the narrative that they are trying to spin right now, the American media. And look, PBS does not deserve our tax dollars. This is so wrong. You're pitting the military leaders or the military members against their commander-in-chief, these officers. You're trying to, spin it like, oh, they're going to be prosecuted by future administrations if they carry out the orders President Donald Trump issues. This is just so nasty and anti-American. And thank you, President Donald Trump, that they are no longer getting tax dollars, PBS, because they definitely don't deserve them. That was a bit of a longer story. I appreciate you being here. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel, subscribe right now. We're going to come back. We'll talk about Snap and how it's getting trimmed up pretty good. Millions are going to be nixed from Snap because of the new BBB, the big beautiful bill. There are some work requirements, and it looks like about 3 million people are going to get booted off of Snap. So we're going to chat a little bit about that. I'll be right back.
Sometimes God stops you cold, not with a whisper, with a punch to the soul. Saul wasn't looking for Jesus. He was hunting Christians. He had power, position, and a mission. Then God knocked him to the dirt, a light from heaven, a voice that knew his name. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? That moment wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was a spiritual ambush. God still works like that. He steps into your mess, interrupts your pride, confronts the man you've become when you're wandered too far. Maybe you're building your own kingdom. Maybe your fists are up, fighting battles God never called you to. Or maybe you're just running hard in the wrong direction. But then comes the voice, clear, heavy, holy. Why are you persecuting me? Jesus doesn't want your behavior fixed. He wants your heart surrendered. Saul didn't get a lecture. He got a mission. Get up, go to the city. You'll be told what to do. That's the way of real manhood in the kingdom. Surrender first, then orders. You don't need every answer right now. You need to obey the voice. Follow the light. Rise up off the dirt and walk the road God lays out it for you. Some roads break you to rebuild you, and that's exactly what Jesus wants. You want to train like a warrior? You need fuel like one. Patriot Pump is clean, powerful pre-workout that won't let you quit halfway. Just like the mission God gives you, it's not about the hype. It's about the grit. Fuel up, lock in, get after it.
Hey, smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. And before we get into my favorite story of the day, which is about a U.S. congressman being on a plane looking at lewd photos of very skanky looking women on this plane, he got caught looking at them. Before we get into that, I will be getting into Snap because there's some changes And we're trimming up the program by millions. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program beneficiaries probably are ecstatic right now because the Schumer shutdown is over. Thank you, President Donald Trump, for signing the bill that ended the Schumer shutdown. But the SNAP that awaits them is not the same one that existed. I think September 30th is when the shutdown happened. So prior to the shutdown, they were on a much different kind of SNAP. Okay, so they are returning to a brand new SNAP. The SNAP beneficiaries probably ecstatic that the shutdown is over and that they get their SNAP bennies, but many probably aren't ecstatic because SNAP is very different now. SNAP is the nation's primary way of providing supposed to be nutritional assistance, okay, to people living at or below the poverty line. It serves approximately 42 million people and 22.4 million households. For those challenged by numbers like me, that means 1 in 8 Americans are on SNAP, and about 1 in 6 households use SNAP. So approximately 39% of recipients are children, 10% are disabled people between the ages of 18 and 59, and another 20% are the elderly. The federal government spends over $100 billion on SNAP. They spent that in fiscal year $100.3 billion, fiscal year 2024. Of that sum, about $7 billion of that $100 billion goes to states to actually administer the program. So SNAP benefits for fiscal year 2024 were about $6 per day per person in a household. Okay, so say you have a family of 4, you get $6 per day. That's how the math kind of checks out. Now, a lot of TikTok videos, and I know of a lot of people who are lying on their SNAP applications and TikTok videos during the shutdown of SNAP showed recipients receiving several $1,000s every month. And they had several thousand available on their EBT cards. Now, they either faked that to get clout and, to gain followers on TikTok, or that's proof, those TikToks are proof that, there's fraud that exists in the SNAP system where people are maybe claiming more kids than they actually have, in order to get the thousands of dollars every month in EBT benefits. Okay. So President Donald Trump, he signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025. And he not only funded the government for the remainder of the year, but he also made some of the largest cuts to SNAP that it's ever seen. Okay. In its history. This includes a $186 billion reduction to SNAP. Okay. Spending. And then it also includes a new work requirement, okay, or new work requirements and other restrictions to those who receive benefits. Okay, so he's made some large cuts, President Donald Trump. And I want to look at the changes today because people are getting their SNAP bennies again, and it is not the same SNAP that they're used to. So the age limit increased. Able-bodied adults ages 18 to 64 have to work at least 80 hours per month or be engaged in volunteering. So you don't even really have to get a paycheck. Okay. You can be involved in some sort of volunteer program to remain eligible. So 80 hours per month, that's 20 hours per week. Okay. That's 5 hours a day. Okay. Monday through Friday. That is part-time. Okay. So they are eligible for SNAP beyond 3 months in the 3-year period. Previously, the upper age limit was 54. Okay, so the age limit was increased. The upper age limit previously was 54. So those are some of the changes. That's, to me, that's all reasonable. Okay, yeah, up it to 64. Okay, it used to be 54. But able-bodied adults without dependents, this category, they have to work part-time Doesn't even have to be a paycheck in order to get the SNAP bennies, if that makes sense. Okay. Previously, people falling into that category, the able-bodied adults without dependents, were allowed to enroll in SNAP for 3 months and 3 years. Okay. Now there were exceptions for veterans, the homeless, kids aging out of the foster care. Okay, if the kids aging out of the foster care and they were able-bodied, but they had dependents, they would still qualify for SNAP bennies. Okay. If you're a veteran and you're an able-bodied adult, they would qualify for the SNAP bennies. And if they're an able-bodied adult without dependents, they're a veteran, they would qualify for SNAP, and they could get the 3 months of SNAP in 3 years. Okay, so these exemptions have been removed. So yeah, the exemptions, there were like exceptions. And these exemptions have been removed. So the caregiver exemption was narrowed. The exemption to limit for care, or the exemption to the time limit for caregivers of children under the age of 18 had been changed to children under the age of 14. Okay, so there were caregiver exemptions. Now they finagled or they kind of limited the number from 8 children under 18 to children under 14. Okay, so there was waiver criteria moved. Areas with unemployment rates outside of Hawaii and Alaska, if they had an unemployment rate of over 10%, they might qualify for waiver from the work requirements. Previously, the waiver would be obtained by the state certifying that certain areas lack sufficient jobs. The waiver was eliminated, and the states were told to use the Bureau of Labor Statistic data to apply for waivers. Okay, so it was all done through the states. Like, you can still, if your area has like a bad unemployment rate or there's not a ton of jobs in the area, you can still get this waiver, but it's going to be done through the Bureau of Labor Statistics and not through these states. Okay, so you can still apply for those waivers. There's other changes. In the past, the federal government picked up the tab for 75% of administrative cost. Under the Big Beautiful Bill, the federal share is 50%. So the states are going to have to kick in a little bit, right? They're not going to cover all of your administrative costs. They're going to end benefits for non-citizens, which is a big one. I guess approximately 250,000 refugees and visa holders were getting SNAP bennies. They're going to end those cuts, or they're going to end those benefits for those refugees and visa holders. Okay, the SNAP benefits. So they ended benefits for most non-citizens. The administrative changes, all of these changes, okay, these are very kind of mild changes. They adjusted some age requirements. They adjusted the work requirements. They removed waivers, these are all sort of mild. But with these administrative changes, it looks like we're going to see a trim of about 3 million recipients every year. Okay, as many as 2.4 million people will be dropped due to the work requirements alone. Okay, so 3 million people, 2.4 of those 3 million are going to be dropped because of the work requirements, because they're not meeting that criteria at 20 hours. Able-bodied adults, and some of these exemptions were removed, from the able-bodied adult work requirements. But it's going to result in 2.4 million people being dropped. So the real savings, though, yes, the work requirements are good. All of these changes are pretty mild. It's just really ensuring that you truly need it. Okay, a lot of these new changes to SNAP. But the real savings is going to be in the fraud reduction. So currently, there is an obscene amount of money being siphoned off from SNAP. The USDA investigators have busted a ring of SNAP fraudsters. So you know how I was telling you about on TikTok, people were saying like, oh, my EBT card gets about 1,000 a month or something like that. Like that shouldn't be the case. And there are people lying about how many dependents they have, how many people are in the household. There are people frauding the system. Okay, so this is KEHOE. And in 2019, this group, I'm looking for Kahau. Hang on. I want to make sure that I got my numbers right here. Okay, I'm just going to skip that part for now because I think that these numbers, I pulled them early this morning. I think they did, the government, let's just say the government, okay, they orchestrated an investigation, and they found approximately 160 unauthorized EBT terminals to stores. They found that there was Kahau, which is a company that they had issued unauthorized EBT terminals to stores across New York, the New York area, to illegally process more than 30 million in EBT transactions. Okay, so this is, there's been USDA investigators who have busted SNAP fraudsters, including, some of these fraudulent unauthorized terminals, okay, to accept EBT. Now, there was co-defendants in this case, Nawafel, I'm going to butcher this, Omar Al-Rashda, KO, they all submitted fraudulent USDA applications, misappropriating USDA license numbers, and in some cases, doctoring application documents to obtain EBT terminals for unauthorized stores. Okay, so these are all companies. Like, the fraud goes beyond the TikTokers who, lie about their need and lie about the dependents and things like that. It goes beyond that, and you have some of these people, these companies that obtain these EBT terminals, and then they give them to unauthorized stores. They give them to smoke shops, or ineligible businesses, so people who don't even sell groceries. Okay, food. This is the supplemental nutrition program, and some of these companies obtain terminals to put them into smoke shops, and people were using EBT cards for smoking products, vaping products. Okay, so I want to share this with you. Here is the tweet from Chester Tim. He says, "Good morning to everyone in Massachusetts who is furious with Maura Healey keeps looking the other way when it comes to waste and fraud explode inside our state SNAP system, as waste and fraud explode inside our state SNAP system. In fiscal year 2024, Q4 alone, $1.9 million in SNAP fraud was uncovered. Another $4.6 million was identified over the full fiscal year. Since December, more than $3.6 million have been stolen straight from families who depend on these benefits. And over the last 3 years, more than 18 million have been drained from the system. Millions lost, fraud rising, and no one is being held accountable. Taxpayers continue footing the bill. Massachusetts needs an audit now." So that's that tweet. He's calling out Maura Healey of Massachusetts, and I want to play for you that's the governor of Massachusetts. I want to play for you this clip. This is the Secretary, USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins, and she has a thing or two to say about the SNAP fraud. Take a listen.
But here's the other thing, Pamela, I think is really important. I've talked quite a bit about this. SNAP is a broken program. SNAP is full of corruption. We found 186,000 dead people. We asked for the SNAP data earlier this year. It has never been turned over to the federal government before. We had 29 states turn it over, mostly red states. 21 states said, no, thank you, we're in litigation. From just those 29 states, we have found, again, almost 200,000 dead people. It's remarkable.
And I understand.
So
and the big,
sure
beautiful bill that passed by Republicans, you know, part of that addressed what Republicans saw as issues with SNAP. And now some people have been taken off the program as a result.
But here's the other thing, Pamela, I think is really important. I've talked quite a bit about this. SNAP is a broken program. SNAP.
Okay. So, a lot of these guys, Michael Kayawi, Mohammed Nawafle, I don't know how to say these names. These are individuals who have been charged with one of the largest food stamp fraud schemes in the United States history, involving over 66 million in unauthorized transactions under the SNAP program. Okay. So these guys were the ones who submitted approximately 200 fraudulent USDA applications, and they misappropriated USD licenses or license numbers. They doctored documents, application documents, and then they obtained these EBT terminals. Okay. And they gave them to stores, including smoke shops. So those are ineligible for EBT terminals. Okay. So that was Secretary Rollins, and she is well aware of the fraud, obviously. Data from 29 states uncovered nearly 200,000 people with dead people's social security numbers. Meanwhile, 21 states are suing to keep their data hidden. Okay, so you've got Illinois being amongst those states, the 21 states that want to keep their data hidden. So data from just 29 states uncovered that there were dead people on the SNAP rolls receiving. So those dead people obviously aren't receiving the SNAP. Somebody is, but they're dead. So the people who are on paper receiving the SNAP aren't actually getting the SNAP. It's somebody else. Okay, so there's 200,000 people with dead people's social security numbers collecting SNAP. And I mean, that's in 29 states. Now you have states like Illinois, suing to keep that data hidden. And, the USDA wants that data to see, hey, who can we clean off of these rolls? Like these 200,000 people, we're cleaning them off of these 29 states because they're dead people's social security numbers. And there's people who are collecting SNAPs using dead people's social security numbers. We have to have some accountability here. And you've got states like Illinois who are keeping their data hush hush, and they don't want accountability to the system at all. So that number, the 29 states, 200,000 people using dead people's social security numbers, that number was developed because they use social security data and they cross-reference that with the SNAP data. If some 200,000 deceased persons were receiving SNAP in states that cooperated, okay, like the 29 states that were cooperating with the federal government, then, I mean, 29, let's just call that half of the states, okay? We could probably project that number as like 500,000 people, just with the social security numbers, dead people getting SNAP benefits, okay? i.e., people using dead people's social security. So like, that's a lot if we were to incorporate the 21 states that aren't cooperating with the federal government and giving over that data to cross-reference it with social security stuff. So overall, if this program is actually implemented, we could return enrollment to pre-COVID levels of about 37 million people. Okay. Like I said, 42 million people are on SNAP right now. That would be huge savings if we could just get that down from 42 million to 37 million pre-COVID levels. That would be a major savings to the taxpayers, clearing people off of these rolls. in these 29 states, I hope that, these 21 states get their act together, and then they give their data over, cross-reference that with the Social Security data. We clear the rolls of people who should not be receiving handouts from the government. Okay. We have to start saving money. SNAP is a program that aids millions of families. However, for it to be widely supported and for it to continue, we have to make an effort to reduce the fraud. Okay. Because right now, I think that you, me, and most Americans, we're getting to a point where we really don't even care too much for the SNAP program, and we would prefer it not be a thing because nobody seems to want to reduce the fraud. You've got 21 states holding out here on handing over data that could be cross-referenced with the Social Security data, and then we could clean up the rolls here of who receives SNAP and get the dead people off of the rolls and prevent them from receiving SNAP because we know they're not receiving it. Okay, so the big beautiful bill changes, and Secretary Rollins, efforts here to increase accountability will put us on a path to where we can serve the needy, and we are spending less money, saving the taxpayers' money, and we are sending fraudsters to jail. That is what needs to be done in order for this program to continue to be supported, because until then, I think that a lot of support is a lot of people are not supporting this program anymore because of the way they don't make an effort to reduce the fraud. And, you've got people who are selling these EBT terminals to smoke shops, and people are using their EBT cards for smoking and for vaping. Like, that's got to stop. So smash that like button, subscribe. Now we're going to get to the story that I'm really excited for, but I'm going to take a quick break. And then I'll get to your comments here on the other side. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, hit that like button, share this out with your friends. I so do appreciate you being here this morning. Lots of comments this morning. What happened to defunding the NGOs? Yeah, early in the show, we were talking about this non-government organization, and I think it's like a nonprofit organization dedicated to really telling military personnel to be disloyal to their command. That's what that's the way I see it, because there is a very high risk, low payoff to disobeying orders, lawful or unlawful orders. Like, even if you don't carry out an unlawful order, you're not going to get in trouble. Okay, if you carry out an unlawful order, you're not really going to get in trouble because there's a solid defense. Now, if you knew it was unlawful, then yeah, you could be held liable. But if it is colorably and presumably looks lawful, then, or appears to be lawful, then you're kind of off the hook. Okay, or you're not going to be held liable or prosecuted for carrying out an unlawful order. There's just very high risk to disobeying an order and to questioning whether a order is lawful or not. President Donald Trump, he's conducting a lot of these operations in the Caribbean, blowing up these Venezuelan cartel members, gang members, TDA, foreign terrorists who have been designated foreign terrorists. He's blowing them up in this operation. And people are saying that that's illegal. It's not. Via executive order, he designated a foreign terrorist group through the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Like, he's doing everything by the book, President Donald Trump. But even if he wasn't, like these military personnel are not going to be held liable in any kind of way for carrying out an unlawful order, which it's not an unlawful order, okay? Because there's plenty of defense for them, even if they had carried out an unlawful order. But the risk of not carrying out an order is very, very high, because it could be punishable by death if we were at a time of war. If you disobeyed orders that were lawful. And if they weren't in a time of war, you get like a life sentence possibly, okay, in prison, if you disobey those orders and they're found lawful. Now, if they are found unlawful, then obviously you won't be punished. But even carrying out unlawful orders, you have a pretty solid defense for doing that, unless you knowingly know, like, hey, this is unlawful, or this is a command, like they issued an order that has me participating in crimes. So anyway, yeah, that NGO, I'd love to look. I did not look into the NGO orders project, where they're funded and how they get their funding, but I'd be curious. I bet there is some sort of government funding that goes on. I'd have to look into it. But the Orders Project, they were cited in this PBS article, and they're trying to spin a narrative, this guy that they interviewed, that Donald Trump is doing something unlawful by blowing up traffickers, sex traffickers, and drug smugglers who are coming into the United States. All right, let's get to my favorite story today. I want to get to this. Congressman Brad Sherman, he's a Democrat in California, and he's got a bit of explaining to do. He was looking at, really, I will say, gawking at these lewd photos on an airline flight, and he's got some explanation. And really, I think his explanation is less than sufficient. He sat down, did like a 13-minute interview with somebody over the lewd photos and him getting caught gawking over these. So ironically, this is a left-wing account who brought this to light. This Sherman fella, Brad Sherman, the U.S. congressman here, gawking at these photos. It was a left-wing account who brought this to light because he's not radical enough on Israel, despite having pushed Sherman himself pro-Palestine policies, Palestinian policies. So this guy, his name is John Bresnahan. He's a Punchbowl news reporter, and he apparently did an interview with this Democrat over the incident on the airline where he's gawking at these photos. No. So the following pictures are not, I would say, pornography. Doesn't quite look like porn. But I mean, it's very skanky looking, like very, it's close. It's close to porn. Maybe not straight up porn. So this guy, here he is. Here's the picture. He's looking at, and you can kind of zoom in there. It's very skankily, women, and he's got his mouth open. He's looking at all these women on his iPad, right, on this airline. And he's a congressman, okay? And he did an interview with, like I said, this left-wing account, puts it up here. And hilariously, in the interview, I guess Sherman here, he blamed Elon Musk, okay, for the incident, claiming that the various pictures randomly popped up on his For You tab on his X account, okay? So here we go. I'm going to share you the exchange here on X. Like I said, this is looks like a left-wing account to me, left-winger. And it's because Sherman is kind of like not as anti-Israel as they'd like him to be, but like he definitely has pushed pro-Palestinian legislation, so I don't understand, but whatever. So here it goes. Sherman denied repeatedly that he was looking at pornography. Now he claims that this is pornography. The women appear clothed, at least somewhat. Very, very nasty, lewd. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's pornography, but it's close. Repeatedly, he denied repeatedly that he was looking at pornography or has a problem with pornography. Sherman said these photos came up in his Twitter feed under the For You page. This was on Twitter, he says, Sherman. These pictures came up on my For You page. I must have looked at more than 1,000 posts during this flight, Sherman said. I asked Sherman if it was appropriate for a congressman to be looking at this kind of stuff openly on a plane. Is it pornography? I don't think Elon Musk thinks so. Is it appropriate? No. So he said, do you have a problem with pornography? The reporter here, and Sherman said, no, I don't have a problem with pornography. Sherman said, it's all about the algorithms. And he asserted that these pictures came up on his feed because of the algorithms. Okay. And I just want to talk about this a second because I don't think he quite understands this old man. I mean, he appears old, this congressman. He's a Democrat congressman, Brad Sherman from California. I don't think he quite understands algorithms. Okay. Was this, a result of the algorithm? Sure. I guess that's a possibility. And I guess it's probable. But it doesn't end the discussion about, his viewing habits. Okay. Because, for example, I go to my For You tab on X and I get a lot of like right-wing, left-wing political posts. Why? Because those are the posts I interact with. I typically, repost a conservative saying something I agree with, or I repost something that a left-winger does, on my page to kind of look back at later and share with you on the show, and I'm, reposting what a left-winger says in disagreement with them. So I get a kind of a mix. So, that's my For You page. And that's why my For You page is loaded up with political posts, because I interact with it. Now, you want to know what I don't interact with? Very nasty looking, slightly looking pornography type posts, or accounts run by these women, OnlyFans pages. I don't really interact with that stuff, so I don't get that stuff on my For You page. I never seek out or interact with those types of posts. So here, if he's saying that this was on my For You page, that he regularly interacts with that type of content, and he can blame the algorithm all he wants, but the algorithm is influenced by your browsing history and what you interact with and your interaction history on X, man. Okay, so I don't think you necessarily know how algorithm works. So if you spend your time bashing, Democrat politicians and replying to Democrat politicians on their feeds, you're going to get more posts from Democrat politicians. I have a ton of X posts on my feed, on my For You page from Democrat politicians, because I constantly am going after them, or constantly, reposting them and going after them. So if you spend your time interacting with certain types of content, certain types of accounts, your feed is going to be more of that. Okay, so everything is derived off of interaction and engagement. So at the end of the interview, this is funny. Burhanashan or Brasana, he's the reporter who did like a 13-minute interview with this guy, Sherman. At the end of the interview, Sherman does some pretty heavy denying. Take a look at this. So here's the end of the interview. Sherman, if I see a picture of a woman, I might look longer than I do at a sunset. Yeah. If I have to fly across the country, you look at a lot of stuff on your tablet. So that's the end of the interview there. He blames it on the algorithms. He blames it on Elon Musk. He says that apparently Elon Musk doesn't think that this is pornography. And like, he's mad at Elon Musk because Elon Musk has like, this kind of content on his which arguably I said it's not pornography, right? I don't think that it reaches the extent of that. It's very skanky looking, but everybody's fully clothed. From what I can tell at what he's looking at here and here, like it looks like these women are clothed. So yeah, I mean, he's just denying. I mean, is any of this really surprising though? I mean, he's a Democrat, he's a politician, they're all creepy. Sherman kind of fits this creepy old man mold to a T. He's got this gaping mouth gaze gawking at these women. His mouth is open as he's browsing this. And, you know, one thing that this highlights is that there's just moral decay in Washington. It is a breeding ground for moral decay. All right, I got to take a quick break, but I'll be right back. And we're going to be talking about Don Harmon, Senate President, Illinois Senate President Don Harmon. He gets a reality check here because somebody, a staffer of his at this Oak Brook office, gets robbed at Knifepoint. And this is kind of ironic because he's a soft on crime politician, Don Harmon is. And apparently he's kind of been enlightened here. So we're going to be right back with that. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'll be right back. Hey, this is Conservative Cat Clips, and this is the place where we remind you that your children come from God and they don't come from the Department of Education. The government wants to raise your kids. They want to feed them breakfast. They want to tell them about gender ideology and gender identity as young as kindergarten. They want to start them out really early. They want to tell you, your kids, how many pronouns they should have, and they want your kids to learn all the pronouns by the age of 3rd grade. Okay. Meanwhile, they can't keep bathrooms clean in their schools. They can't keep their test scores up, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They can't keep those scores above sea level. The truth here is that bureaucrats don't love their kids. They don't know their quirks, their fears, their hearts, and they certainly don't care what the Bible says about fearing or about raising them in fearing the Lord. Okay, so in Psalm 127, verse 3, children are a heritage from the Lord, not a project for the state, not a cultural science experiment. They are your responsibility, your blessing, and your mission. Okay, but what happens if you step in and they say, you know, I'll take it from here? Okay, and what happens when you step in and say, hey, I'm actually going to take responsibility and I'm going to participate in raising my child? You show up to the school board meetings, you ask about the curriculum, you object to Drag Queen Story Hour and Drag Queen Library Story Hour and all of these pornographic books in the libraries. What happens when you say, I'm going to take it from here, I'm going to start participating in my mission and my responsibility in raising up my child? You are deemed a domestic terrorist. Okay, if you start showing up and if you actually start taking responsibility over raising your child, you are dangerous to democracy. They'll say that. And they'll say that all because you just started loving your kid enough to be involved. So we've normalized this idea that parents should just hand over their kids for 8 hours a day and play catch up over a microwave dinner and try to catch up on who your kid actually is. Your kids are strangers. That's not parenting, that's outsourcing. So the product here is a generation that is anxious, that is confused, and they are spiritually hollow. What if we flipped the script? Really, what if we turned off the screens, cracked open a Bible, and actually parented the way Deuteronomy 6 tells us to parent, at home and all of the time? And I think that our future of the country actually depends on this. And I hope that we start parenting like our future and like the future of the country depends on it, because it does. So don't be intimidated. God gave you those kids for a reason. Raise them up in truth, teach them real values, and never hand over this sacred duty to the folks who say remote learning is the way to go, or gender identity. You can identify as whatever the hell you want. Don't hand over that sacred duty of parenting and raising your children to people who are just wacky weirdos. You can raise your children, and you are required to raise your children because they are a gift from God, and He's bestowed a sacred duty on you as a parent. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you could please. Do that for me, that'd be great. Barry, appreciate the support. You're the best. You guys can always support the program. Super chats, super stickers, appreciate that always. PatriotPumpEnergy.com. You can buy your bottle of premium pre-workout today. It says 150 milligrams of caffeine, 2,500 milligrams of creatine. Very good stuff. No artificial colors. Provides you long-lasting energy all day. Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show, where we sink our claws into the truth. I'm your host, Kat. And let's talk about soft on crime politicians, because this is really fascinating stuff. I guess this soft on crime politician, Don Harmon, has gotten a bit of a reality check. Okay. Reality mugged somebody today. Literally, a staffer for Illinois Senate President Don Harmon. Yes, Don Harmon. He is the champion, really. Has voted for defund police initiatives, pro BLM initiatives, soft on crime. He's a part of the soft on crime revolution here in the state. Staffer of his was robbed at Knifepoint. Yes, the universe has somewhat a sense of a humor, okay? This is interesting. Let's take a listen to the report. Here we go.
An armed robbery outside Illinois State Senator Don Harmon's office. It happened Friday evening at Harmon's office on North Avenue in Oak Park. According to court records, Scott Loafer pointed a knife and took a woman's cell phone. He's charged with armed robbery. Officials say the incident does not appear to have been politically motivated. An armed robbery outside Illinois State Senator Don Harmon
does not appear to be politically motivated. Yeah. I don't think that the robber, took a moment and debated to himself, oh, should I rob this guy because he's, part of, this movement of dismantling law enforcement? Is he a Democrat? Is he a Republican? I don't think that happened. Robbers are robbers. Criminals are criminals. Okay. Yeah, this just, I find it fascinating that they had mentioned, oh, this is, not politically motivated. The staffer being robbed at Knifepoint. Well, yeah, it's Oak Brook. And this is what happens when you have soft on crime policies. There's robbers running around everywhere, holding knives up to people and stealing things from them. So we're going to dive into the hypocrisy here. We're going to dive into some theology, some history, and we're going to dive into policy disaster after policy disaster after policy disaster right here. So let's scratch this up, folks. Here's the report. The staffer for Senate President Don Harmon. He is one of the top crusaders of soft on crime policies. Okay, Don Harmon is, and a staffer was confronted in Oak Brook at Knifepoint. Yes, Oak Brook is a progressive dreamland. Okay, is the best way I could describe it. They've got yard signs, those gay yard signs where they say hate doesn't have a home here or whatever. You know what I mean? I hate. There's no hate here. Really, you don't hate Hitler, right? I mean, hate is justified in some instances, right? I hate those signs. I can't. We in this house, we support immigration. In this house, we're pro-choice. The signs I'm talking about. So in Oak Brook, you drive around, the yard signs outnumber police officers. Okay, the virtue signaling yard signs. And if you were to back the blue or utter the phrase "back the blue," you would be shunned. You're a wine mom, and you would be shunned from your brunches, and your wine clubs and everything like that. If you were to say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm actually pro law enforcement," you'd be shunned. That's kind of how Oak Brook is. So, the same leadership that has spent years demoralizing police, handcuffing police officers, telling criminals that they are victims of circumstance. They now the Democrat leadership here that has been doing all of that all these years is now praising the Oak Park Police Department for their quick response. Isn't that funny? Now all of a sudden, because it hits a little too close to home, you want the police, you're going to call the police. If somebody robs you at Knifepoint, and yeah, the police are great now because your people are affected. You see, isn't that how it always goes? Illinois families are robbed. They could give two hoots, they don't care. We're shot at, we're assaulted, but the Democrat leaders shrug it off. And then the moment, your neighborhood gets torched by BLM rioters, they tell you, oh, show sympathy. Your store gets looted. They say, think about the root causes. These criminals are just victims of certain circumstances. But when one of their own, the elite, because it's thee versus me, if one of the elite, they get robbed, suddenly it's thank you, brave officers. We really need you. Thanks for your quick response. Yeah. So let's claw into what Don Harmon has actually done legislatively. Because I can say he's pro defund the police all I want, but I have to provide you receipts, right? The Safety Act that ended cash bail, emptied jails, and tied police hands. BLM approved criminal justice reforms, okay? Reimagining policing initiatives, reducing penalties, all of that. He's approved that, Don Harmon, okay? In his legislative history, he's championed alternatives to incarceration, he's championed things like the Peacekeeper Initiative, these alternatives to incarceration, because apparently consequences are optional now, and we shouldn't have them here in the state of Illinois. So he's championed legislation that fight incarceration and consequences for action. They've undercut law enforcement budgets because keeping communities safe is systematically oppressive according to Democrats. So they cut things like Shot Spotter. It's a technology where if there's a gunshot that goes off, it sends a message to police and they can go respond. It's kind of cool stuff, and the police really like it in Chicago, but Chicago politicians have canceled it. Why? Because it's systemically oppressive, right? Law enforcement is a sickness, to quote Brandon Johnson. So this is all done under the moral banner. Everything that Don Harmon has done, it's all done under the moral banner of reform. Okay. Now, let's be honest. These policies are not about reforming anything. This is a permission slip for criminals to do crime. Okay. Everything that this guy's voted on, it's just permission slips to do crime. So this is the fruit of their own tree. When one of their own gets robbed, you cannot dismantle law enforcement, mock the rule of law, call law enforcement a sickness, justify criminality, and then be shocked when crime comes a knocking on your door. All right, Galatians 6:7 says, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. So Illinois has sowed criminal empowerment, and now they are reaping the criminal reality. In this media line, you heard the broadcaster there, it doesn't appear to be politically motivated. Yeah, okay, well, let's analyze that. Imagine the robber. Okay, before I take your wallet at Knifepoint, let me ask your stance on urban initiatives, funded through progressive revenue structures, or, I don't think the robber is really, thinking about politics or what kind of politics the victim has before robbing anybody. Okay. I don't think that the robber's saying to himself, I need to determine if this is a bipartisan mugging or if it's a targeted ideological expression. Okay. That's not what's happening. Okay. They're criminals, and the extent of their thought is, hey, how can I hurt this person? and get what I want. Okay, that is behind every single criminal. And you see how dumb that sounds now. The broadcaster saying this isn't politically. Of course it's not. He's a robber, and it's in Oak Brook, and Illinois is policies have caused this to happen. So crime is crime. Now, what she failed to mention is that it's not politically motivated, but there are political responsibilities there are people who are politically responsible for the crime levels, and that absolutely exists. When you build policies that weaken police, embolden criminals, eliminate consequences, reward bad behavior, you don't have to wonder about how and why these things happen. Okay, you don't need political motivation, okay, for a crime here in the state of Illinois. It's politically caused, the crime. But they're criminals. They're just going to try to commit as much crime as possible. And hey, I want to hurt this person so I benefit in some sort of way. That's the extent of what they are thinking about, these criminals. Okay. But it's definitely politically caused. And these journalists, these journalismers, they're not doing you justice, the Illinois resident, by omitting that part of the story. So let's take a step back, look at this biblically. Government is, their God-given role is justice. Okay, Romans 13 tells us that civil authority does not bear the sword in vain. But today's Illinois leadership, they don't want to bear the sword. They want to bear a little feather. Okay, they want government to bear a feather, not a sword. They say justice is harsh. They say punishment is inequitable. They say crime is a social construct. They say accountability is oppressive. Not according to God, it isn't. God is merciful, yes. But mercy without justice is chaos. Okay, and chaos consumes the innocent first. So this liberal worldview says, fix society, not the criminal. The Christian worldview is, hey, we have to fix both. The way we do that is truth, justice, and moral accountability. Illinois has chosen the liberal worldview, not the Christian worldview. Now, Don Harmon, he puts out a statement after his staffer gets attacked here with the knife. And I don't want anybody to get attacked with a knife, okay? But I think it's funny, actually, ironic, that he thanks the Oak Brook Police for their quick response. Hold on, come again, Don. He goes, I want to thank the Oak Park Police Department for their quick response. Come again? I'm sorry. Aren't you the same Don Harmon who championed the Police Are the Problem bill, Safety Act, and cash bail? Aren't you the guy who's all about these, criminal justice reforms that embolden criminals for the past 5 years? Aren't you that guy? This is the same Don Harmon who has created the system where the criminals walk free before the paperwork, the ink is dried. They get out on no cash bail. And this is the same Don Harmon who treats really police officers like villains, like all the Democrat Party does. They treat them like villains in a Hollywood movie. To quote Brandon Johnson, law enforcement is a sickness. So, when crime hits a little too close to home for these people, suddenly the uniform looks a lot less oppressive, and I find it fascinating that they implement things like the Safety Act or open border sanctuary cities. And it kind of reminds me of this story. We remember Emma Schaefer, Gabriel Calixto. Emma Schaefer's parents were really upset with Kristi Noem for coming to Springfield and pointing to her case as a reason why we shouldn't have open immigration or open border policies, because Gabriel Calixto stabbed allegedly this woman to death, Emma Schaefer, in Springfield, Illinois. And liberal policies, they will come and wind up hurting you as well. So why the hell do you pass them? Next week, I'm going to be not shocked if I see Don Harmon, hugging a canine from the canine unit and asking to ride around in a police cruiser. Right. Suddenly, once the crime happens on your doorstep and with your people, you're all about the uniform and you're all about, police all of a sudden. So I'm not buying it. Actions speak louder than words. Repeal the Safety Act. But I want to point to history here and do a little bit of a history lesson. History is full of societies that have experimented with these soft on crime, soft justice movements. Now, it's really fascinating. Our God, the Christian God, Yahweh, he is a merciful God and a God of justice. So he is both. Okay. And in Islam, Allah, the God, is all about mercy, not justice. And here's why they want to remove justice from really government. And I think it comes from this liberal worldview, but also a religious worldview, that justice is yours. Okay, it's not something that in Romans 13, and this is just the antithetical to Christianity. In Romans 13, God-given duty to the government is, hey, here's your sword. You have civil authority. Your role is to protect the innocent. Okay, that's read Romans 13. The antithesis to that is actually no, the people are to get justice for themselves, and there is no, government that's bestowed that duty from God. So yeah, there have been multiple soft on justice movements, and really, I think it's derived from. So that's why you see a bunch of like jihadists, radical Islamists who, strap bombs to their chest and do suicide bombings. What would provoke a person to do that? You might ask yourself, because ideology, the antithesis to Christianity, says you are the one to seek justice for God. Okay, your God, their God, the Islamic God, Allah, is a God of all mercy, but not a God of justice. So justice is the people's, that ideology. And, we have, and Romans 13 makes it very clear, here in America, a system where the government is bestowed this duty by God to be the justice figure, okay, civilly. So let me point to some of these movements. In ancient Rome, moral decay, lawlessness, political cowardice led to societal collapse. You have another case in 18th century France, soft policing led to mobs led to chaos, and chaos led to tyranny. You had Chaz, Seattle. During Chaz, they abolished the police for a summer. You guys remember this. This is sort of modern history. The result, you had, I think, like a couple of murders, rampant assaults, autonomous warlords, and then quietly they restored the police presence there in Chaz because it was just so chaotic. So a lot of societies have tried to reimagine policing or reimagine public safety. And really it stems from this ideology, the antithesis to Christianity, giving justice to the civilians rather to the government. And as dictated in Romans 13, that's only God's to give, and he gives it to the government for justice, to be merciful, but to also seek justice. So you can't have civilization without law enforcement. To sum it up, you can't have freedom without order. And I want to talk about something that the media never covers here. Okay. The mother in Chicago who can't let her kids ride the bus because there's, a crime and there's no consequences for carjackers. The kids, she can't get them to where they need to go because the bus isn't safe. She can't take them to school because the carjackings have gotten out of control, the juvenile carjackers. The small business owner, the media never talks about him, who gets robbed. And he's told all the time that insurance will cover it. They never do. Okay, the elderly couple who walk down to their mailbox, and they're afraid to do it, after sundown because the criminals, they don't talk about those stories. The dad working a couple of jobs and his car gets stolen by someone, charged with unlawful possession of a vehicle, and this guy is going to get charged with a lesser charge, like unlawful possession of a vehicle rather than grand theft. That's what's going on in Chicago. And there's no press conferences for them. There's no talk about them in the media. There's no statements. But when the elites get in trouble here, there's all kinds of press conferences. There's all kinds of statements released where they say, oh, thank you to the police. Okay, so this moment matters because every once in a while, a political narrative gets pierced by reality. Okay, so sharply that even the architects of the narrative can't avoid it. So this robbery wasn't a crime of politics, but it was a crime made possible by politics. Okay. Oh, it's not politically motivated. No, but it was a crime made possible by politics. And Illinois politicians have treated crime like some sort of thesis, for their, paper in college rather than the moral evil that it is. Crime is a moral evil. And you, being the government, have a duty, a God-given duty, as dictated in Romans 13, to step in and sharply provide justice for victims of crime. So crime stops being abstract and becomes personal, okay, for these people when things like this happen. And I hope that they realize that consequences matters. I would hope that, Don Harmon, the Senate staffer, who was wrongfully, this is terrible that he was held at Knifepoint and robbed. I hope that Don Harmon realizes now that, hey, justice matters. We should get justice for your staffer. We should put the guy behind bars. Consequences matter. Police matter. And, there's a way to do this. I hope that Don Harmon restores cash bail. I hope that he launches a push. He can. He's leadership. We need to stop letting violent offenders walk. Okay. We need to reinforce police authority. If police officers can't pursue criminals, if they aren't given the tools like ShotSpotter to pursue the criminals, the criminals are going to pursue us. So we have to reinforce police authority. We have to end BLM legislation, things like the Peacekeepers Initiative. Those are bad ideas dressed up in moral language. Okay. We have to bring back tough sentencing for repeat offenders. We have to have accountability. Mercy without accountability is chaos. We have to put victims first, criminals last, and fund local departments, not with bloated bureaucracy, pencil pushers, but actual tools like ShotSpotter, actual training, actual support. I'm not saying to expand the bureaucracy in these police stations with DEI hires or DEI directors or pencil pushers. No, we need to give them actual tools. And we need to encourage faith-based rehabilitation of our criminals. Okay. Because this is a moral problem. This is a heart problem. This is a not accepting Jesus problem. And once we understand that as a state, we can start to tackle this problem of crime at a societal level, as well as, providing moral accountability. So in closing, Don Harmon and his staff, they experienced up close and personal what their own policies have unleashed on the rest of us. And if this moment helps even one lawmaker rediscover the truth that police are essential, criminals need consequences, and that justice protects innocent people, then maybe the mugging that happened in Oak Brook will save someone else from a worse fate. And I pray for Illinois. I pray for our leaders. I pray for even the misguided ones. And I hope that the next time we'll save somebody from a worse fate. And the way we do that is by repealing the Safety Act and, stop it with these silly little policies like the Peacekeepers Initiative, BLM crafted legislation. All right. Appreciate you being here. Cat's Logic, piercing. I appreciate it. And all the kind words, catch and release. So, hey, they want to protect the criminals, their so-called assets on the street. Yeah, it goes beyond catch and release. They are quite literally, through the Peacekeepers Initiative, paying $200 a day in taxpayer funds to ex-cons. And like quite literally, I think that they're operatives. I mean, that's what it looks like. The Democrat operatives, they're paying them with taxpayer funds, and they're going out there and committing all kinds of terrible crimes. So they don't really appear to me like criminals. They appear more to me like assets to the Democrat Party at this point, because they've gone beyond just saying, virtue signaling, saying, these are criminals are victims of consequence or circumstances. They've gone beyond that, and they are rewarding these people for the crimes that they commit out on the streets. All right. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Love you so much. We're going to be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Bye-bye. We'll catch you soon.